Welcome back to Real Talk with Real People, a Candid Conversation. This is part 3 of our 5-part series with Renee Marshall-McKinley and myself. So let's take a listen.
So Karoline gave me an assignment to. She gave us an assignment to write the story, and I could not finish mine in like one sitting. Some people can just write like that, and that wasn't me. I had to take it down, think of characters, which became my sister's names. See, again, I told you even though it was fictional, that was a fictional story, I had to bring some truth to it to make me able to write it. But I procrastinated in that because she gave us, almost months.
Yeah.
And I started it, and I said, oh, God, I can't finish this right now because I can't think. And then I jumped back in it when we did our next podcast. So in 30 days, I think, we were doing it once a month. So then another 30 days, I was like, oh, gosh, okay, I owe Karoline an assignment. Mm-hmm. Let me get back to it. And then I still was not finished. So it took me another 30 days to get to it. Instead of me just sitting there because I didn't give myself dedicated time, I just, I said, okay, well, I don't have to give this to her until a whole year. So I pretty much used almost that whole year. Like I told you earlier, I'm a project manager, so I'm gonna have to work by the task. If you had told me the assignment was really due in 30 days, I would have made sure that I got it done because I owed it to you. Not necessarily I owed it to myself to see that I can complete it because I knew I accepted that challenge, I was going to complete it.
Yeah.
But if I said that I owed it to Karoline to give this assignment, just like school, if your professor tells you, you got to get this done by XYZ, we're going to get it done.
You're going to get it done because you're
we're accountable and
That's right,
responsible for something.
Yes.
But sometimes when you just doing it for yourself, if it's not your passion per se, it might take a little bit longer. So, that was another form of procrastination for me. But once I determined that, okay, gosh, this is just like school, I need to get this assignment done to Karoline, and made myself more accountable to Karoline to make sure that I got the task done in a timely manner, even though she gave me a year and I took that for a year.
Yeah, but I want you to know, Renee, that I also did not sit down in one sitting and write the story.
You didn't?
No, I did not. And the only person who sat down and wrote that story in one sitting was Al.
Well, he was just hot off of writing his last book, so we ain't talking about
exactly.
that.
He had just dropped Ace and Mika.
Yes.
He had just dropped it, and he was on fire.
He was ready.
And he was like, what assignment did you give everybody? And he's like, I want to be in on it. I said, well, it's due like in 2 weeks ago. I got this.
Oh, my God.
And he sat down and he wrote it. But like you,
put me to shame.
I did not sit down and write it in one sitting because I had to think. Because remember, it wasn't just that we were writing a short story. Right. I gave us a scenario.
You did.
And I had to follow that scenario too. Yeah. There were certain points that we had to make sure that we were hitting.
Yes.
And so I had to sit down and cohesively try to put together a story as well, like you did.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, but here's the thing. I did write the most of that story within the first 2 months, right? Okay. And I save all of my stuff on an external drive, so I can go from computer to computer.
Yeah.
If I just take my external drive, if I have to be in a library or whatever, and I was having trouble with my laptop, and I had to buy another one. But getting back on topic, I dropped my external drive and lost every single bit of my work.
Oh no!
Every bit of it. Not just the story that I had just started with you,
but
every bit of the things that was on my external drive. It was a nightmare for me because there was a lot of stuff. The only thing that saved me is that most of that stuff was on the cloud. Oof. Most of it. But there was some new stuff that I had just did, and I wasn't saving it on the cloud. I was saving it just on my external.
Yes.
And when the external drive dropped, I could not fix it. That story was on there. And it was almost completed.
Can I ask you a question? So, did you recall the story as you had previously wrote it, or did you change it when you had to submit it?
Well, it changed. Okay. It didn't change completely because the first page of it was still on my on my computer.
Okay, so you were able to save that.
On my computer's hard drive. But then I said, I'm not going to save it there because, my computer was acting up.
Right.
So my computer could have died at any moment. So I put everything else on my external. So I had one page of it that was still on my actual laptop, which I pulled it out. Wow. But I had to just basically start all over because I forgot my character's name because I didn't on the first page of it I didn't mention her name. So now I didn't even remember her name or the name of the man I had to I literally had to start all over at that point. But
I would have been so stressed. See, for me, I would have been stressed.
I wasn't stressed. I was upset. But I was upset because this wasn't, and Al's like, Al told me, he's like, you keep dropping that, and because I had dropped it like 3 times.
Oh Lord!
And I told him he jinxed me, because right there he looked at me. He goes, he said, you keep dropping that external drive, and you are not going to get your work. And I promise you, the next day I dropped it again, and the next day it was gone.
See, nobody tell me speak that into
existence. So I'm like, and I said to him, why you bring that into existence? Yes. Why did you speak that into existence? But
it might have gave you one extra time.
It may have given, but you know what though? But here's the thing, and this is good to talk about.
Yeah.
Because now we're moving into something else. What happens when you lose all of your work?
Well,
because it has happened to many authors.
Yeah.
I'm not the only. As a matter of fact, this ain't the first time. When I first started writing Someone to Love.
Yeah.
Same thing happened. I lost like 6 chapters.
Oh man!
It was so devastating to me that I sat in my living room and cried for 3 days.
I would cry with you.
For 3 days I cried.
Yes.
3 days. And my husband felt so bad for me. He felt so bad for me, but I was angry at that point because I didn't understand, like, what in the what?
Because let me tell you something.
Now,
you know how I always say, my mind is slipping.
Mm-hmm.
Renee saves things in so many places.
And Karoline need to.
So I started it on this phone.
Yeah.
I emailed it to work just as a last place.
Oh, you so
then
smart.
I added it. I emailed it to my computer. So this girl had this thing in 3 different places. And I took a copy and put it in one of them calendar dates. So I made copies on copies on copies.
You are smart.
No, girl, that's
sometimes my creativity don't live up to my intelligence. You know what I'm saying? But here's the thing, and Al, he was consoling me back then because he just felt so bad for me because it was like, and he really encouraged me. He says, "Listen, I know that you were so happy with what you wrote, and I know it was probably fire."
Yes.
He says, "But you wrote it the first time, which means that you can write it again."
Yes.
He really encouraged me because I was like ready to throw my pen down and I wasn't going to do this again. I was like, I'm done. I mean, 6 chapters gone.
So wait a minute. Now you just said something different. So you started on your computer, but then you started writing it out with a pen?
Well, I have several books of me writing stuff out. I lost it in my computer though. Yeah. I'm always having computer issues. I go through computers a lot. I don't know what it is because maybe
you been banging on them keys like I can start out.
Right now I have a laptop that will not keep charge, so I can be working while it's plugged up.
Oh.
And all of a sudden I'm in the middle of working and it's like, okay, I have no charge. It's like, oh, you better plug in your computer. I'm like, my computer's plugged in.
No.
Like, what's happening? I go through so many laptops. And I don't know if it's a memory thing or whatever it is. Yeah. And maybe it's because I'm using my laptop everywhere. I'm taking it with me everywhere. Yes. Maybe, it needs to stay stationary. But it's not stationary because I feel like a laptop shouldn't be stationary.
Right. We need to be portable.
I need portable, right. So, but what I started doing also, too, because my stories come quickly when I have a story, okay. I began also, too, carrying a recorder with me.
Ooh,
so I literally can speak my stories into a recorder because I know what I want to write.
Right. So that's a little segue for us.
Yes.
Because how are we keeping track of the work that we're working on, right? So there's computer.
Yes.
There's some people who still may type.
Yes.
Like a real
and I still got books of stuff that I've written.
There's people who write in pencil. There's people who write in pen.
Yeah.
There's people who have the recorders.
Yes.
There's a lot of different ways that people can,
the different methods of how you bring your stuff to fruition.
Right.
When I worked at the post office, and we talking many years ago. We talking many years ago. All of my songwriting was done while I was delivering mail.
You were a carrier. I never knew that.
I was a letter carrier. Yes, ma'am.
Now, guys, I've known Karoline for a lot of years. I've never known that, but go ahead.
I was a letter carrier when I lived in Hackensack. We were still in Hackensack at that time, right? Okay. We had just moved to East Orange, but I was still a letter carrier in South Hackensack.
Okay.
But all of my songwriting was done while I was delivering mail. I just simply had my recorder, and I'd be singing them because I knew it. I would sing them, into the recorder so that I could have it. Yes. Or if I just had lyrics and I was like humming a beat, or if I just had the rhythm of it and I didn't have words, all of that went into a recorder. And I did that while I was carrying mail, during my routes, in my truck, walking down them streets because them streets were hot. And aggravated, and trust me, carrying that big old bag on my little body, because at that point I was a little person, it was a lot.
Wow.
And the way I got through being a letter carrier for 3 years was me being able to create. I created lots of songs during that time because that was my creativity.
And I was crazy.
Time.
There you go. You were.
Yes.
Not here, you were there.
Yes. It made delivering mail easier for me because that was a hardship for me.
Yes.
I thought I wanted to be a letter carrier, but at 100 pounds, being a letter carrier was not something I wanted to do.
Especially in the elements, the wind, the cold, the heat, the high, blah, blah, blah.
Man, it was a lot. Just walking my joints, and I always had joint problems. I always had pain in my joints. So carrying that big old bag. So in order for me to mentally take myself, the Walter Mitty,
Oh, yes.
To mentally take myself someplace else so that I'm not in the condition that I'm in.
Yeah.
I wrote songs in my head. When I realized I could, I would say them over and over again. Sometimes when I wasn't able to record because I was delivering, I would just sing it over and over again, sing it over and over again until it was memory.
It was your song.
And then when I was able to get into the truck, I would write it down real quick, or I would sing it into the recorder. But that's how I wrote all my songs.
Now, see, for me, thank God for the computer age.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember in high school and college, we had to use those typewriters, right? But for me, as an author, of course, I don't have a typewriter. And my handwriting is atrocious. Because sometimes I write it too fast, and then I'm like, oh, what was this? Or it's just doctor signature. So that is not a method for me that I could use.
Okay.
Now, I could record, but I'm a typer. Because I type for work, I type for play, for pleasure. So my only method is, my main method would be the computer and then typing it on in my phone.
Okay.
But then I could see voice text, voice recording as another mode.
Yeah, you can, if you're going to use your phone, you could do voice texting, and to yourself. Yeah. Voice text it to yourself.
But from setup for me. So when I try to put things in paper, I would write it, and then I would have to look at it, one, to see if it makes sense. One, to see if it makes sense, and then two, to see if I can continue on. So if I did the voice to text, I don't think that, it would work for me for like a quick, this is an idea. But for me to actually get it ready for the flow, I think I need the computer, because I could see. I'm visual in everything that I do. Yeah. I need to see something.
You don't always have a computer at your
I know. I got an iPad too.
Well, you know what? I haven't been able to really use the
I
iPad.
didn't do it either, but I got one as a backup. I got a laptop, personal iPad, and then this little bit. Lord, if something happens to my phone, I don't know what I would do. But this phone, me and this phone are buddies. This is my tool of choice.
Well, and this is great because we're now talking about many ways that you can get your ideas.
Yes.
There are many methods.
You don't have to lose them. Don't have to lose them.
That's right.
Because this is me. Sometimes in the morning, I'm watching. No, Sunday. Today, as a matter of fact, I got up a little bit early and I was watching church. And Charles Stanley, God rest his soul, was playing. And they have a Charles Stanley University or Charles Stanley something. because now I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But I would usually type it real fast.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do it today because I was late for church. No, I wasn't late for church. I was late in my preparation. I usually write it down so I can remember to go back. But I didn't do that today. But this is my method of choice in all the things.
Wow. So there are no excuses is what we're trying to say.
There really is.
If you don't have a computer, use a piece of paper. Use a paper and pen.
Yes.
If you don't write well, where your writing is eligible, use a recorder.
Yes.
If you don't have a recorder, then you can use your phone.
Yes.
I love that we are talking about the mini myth. I don't want anybody to use the excuse, "Oh, I didn't have a computer to write this."
I don't have. And my cousin is doing that right now. Sorry, point. But that just made me think of a point. My family and my aunt came up with this idea. Every day we're going to add to a short story for 30 days.
Okay, beautiful.
30 days. So we did this 2 years ago or 3 years ago. We started this. So when you came up with your topic, I said, oh my God, we were already doing that.
Yeah.
So for 3 years ago, for 30 days, we were adding one to a story. So each day we wrote something. So I told my cousin, after I had finished my book, I said, why don't you go back and take those stories and put it into a book? Because he kept going on, whereas I said, I'm going to give you, one short story, then I'm going to go on and do whatever else I got to do. I'll read y'all stories, but I have other stuff that I wanted to do. I just want to make sure I participated, blah, blah, blah. So I said, why don't you go ahead and pull those stories from the text messages that you wrote to us and put it in a book? What did he say? I am, but my computer. I got to get a new computer.
Got to get a new computer.
I said, dude, what? Dude, what? So we did that 3 years ago, and he still don't have his book.
Because any kind of excuse that we use to justify why we don't, and we got
some excuses.
And you got people who, and when I say guerrilla warfare, me and Al always talk about guerrilla warfare because we use guerrilla warfare for everything. Okay, this may not be the right way to do it, but I need this now. And so we're gonna put something together so we can get it done. Okay, we will figure out the right way to do it later, but it doesn't stop us. It's like, okay, we're gonna do some guerrilla warfare right here because I need this done. Right, which brings me into another topic that we're going to talk about: plays and performances. Okay, I want to talk about plays and performances, especially now because you are performing.
I'm a thespian, y'all.
Yes, you are.
And I'm an actor.
Yes. See, other things that you are adding to your repertoire that you don't even realize, right?
Right.
And I want to put out here in those airwaves that I am a playwright.
Yes, she is.
Right, and I have written several plays. Yes. We have performed several plays.
Yes.
I have produced several plays. Yes, I have directed several plays.
Yes, you did.
So, and that's another form of writing.
It is. It absolutely is. Because you're telling a story.
You're telling a story.
It's just in movement form or singing or, the medium is different. The medium is just different.
The medium is different because literally when you are writing a script, whether it's a film script or a play script, you are writing.
Right.
There's a certain, like you said, there's a different format. Yes. There's a different way you put a play down on paper.
Yes.
And a different way that you put, a screenplay down on paper. Yeah. But it's still a writing. There's still a writing room. There's still somebody writing.
Yes.
This stuff. You're writing characters. When we look at Tyler Perry and we look at Medea and we look at Sisters and all the stuff that we are listening to, you
all
get
the things, right?
All the things. Some of the things that you've heard people say, oh, well, he needs to get good writers. He needs to get another writer. There's a writing room. You're sitting down and you're putting this together. Tyler Perry knew the kind of writing he was doing. Mm-hmm. He knew what he was trying to write. He knew the audience that he was writing for. He knew what he wanted to do. He had the characters in his head. He knew the characterization.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Yes. So playwriting for me was like that as well. It was like, even though I wasn't writing a book,
right,
I was still creating characters.
Yes.
And I was still putting them in situations.
Yeah. Now, so I'm an observer in this space because I have not written a play and I have not written a, what do we say? What do we call it? Plays and what?
Plays and performances.
But you have performed. But I have performed.
Yes.
So for me, when I see a character, someone's written a character, and I'm reading the script, and trying to bring that that person to life. For example, I just did a play called Let It Go. Let It Go.
Yeah. Let It Go.
Let It Go. Just did a play called Let It Go. And in that play, I had two roles. Now, my memory is just so shot. So I said, as he was casting, I said, let me just play the dead mother. So he was telling us about the people he had coming on. I said, let me just play the dead mother. He goes, nope, got something else for you. I said, okay. But look at God. The role that he had written, I can tell you, he wrote it for me. Because the role that he gave me was to be an influencer on social media. And I do this all the time with all the things I got going on. So I said, how am I going to portray this person? And I love humor and I love laughter.
Yes, you do.
And so I said to my mother, my actor mother, I said, we're going to make ours funny. So I need you to yell at me, and I'm going to not be paying you any attention. So we had to talk it out about how we were going to do it. So he gave us the parameter.
Yes.
And let us run with it.
Yes.
Which I like because, one, again, I can't remember all the words, right? So, of course, he had his own words, blah, 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 blah. But we could ad-lib and interject and do it, to make it our own, which we did, which I love that. If I was in a play where people want you to stick to the words, woo, I would struggle. But I believe that I could do it because, you got to study. You got to study. You got to study.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. When I wrote Women on the Edge, Women on the Edge was a book of short stories, and then when I adapted it into play form, there was a lot of monologue. Women on the Edge was monologue driven.
Yes.
Which meant that those women had to memorize long pages of monologue, right? So, when I started producing, again, I call myself an accidental author. Yeah. I was an accidental producer and an accidental director.
She did it, y'all.
Because I asked for help.
Yeah.
And individuals did not want to help me on my terms. They wanted to help me on their terms.
See, yeah.
And it was like, no,
yours.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm going to have to take ownership of this. This cannot be on your terms. It needs to be on my terms.
Yes, because it's not yours.
It's not yours. It's mine. This is an original play that I wrote.
Yes.
You are not going to tell me what I'm going to do.
Yes.
Or I wouldn't do this. Or I would take. I don't care what you would do.
Yes.
I'm going to need you to direct this play exactly how I wrote it.
Right.
And when you decided that you didn't want to do that, you left me with no choice but to do it myself.
But isn't that something, though?
Yes. So I became a director.
Yes.
I became a director because the director I hired wouldn't do it the way I wanted it done. Told me that I was too close to it because I was the writer. You're darn right I'm close to it. I'm going to need for you to allow my vision to come to fruition, not your vision.
But out of that, you became a director.
I became a director. On the spot,
even though that
I became a director.
Your goal.
It was not my goal.
You didn't set out to do that.
It was not my goal.
But you were able to add something else.
Yes.
To your resume.
Yes. And then my next plays after that, I never hired a director.
Because you didn't need
because
to. Because you were a director.
Because I directed all the rest of them. Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, who's the producer? The producer is the person who provides the money.
Yes.
That's who the producer is.
That's right.
So I became the producer because I paid for, provided the monies to put these plays on. You understand what I'm saying?
Wait a minute, you weren't in that play though.
I couldn't be in that play because I was directing it.
Right.
Originally, I was in the play. Yeah. I did have a part, but I could not be in the play and direct the play. Yeah. So I had to give up my part. I wanted to do the acting part because I wanted to do acting.
But you know what? Now when people shooting these movies, these films, they are doing all the things.
I know they're doing all the things. But I needed So I needed a director to be able to direct while I could be in the play.
Yes.
But since he wasn't going to be cooperative, I had to pull myself out of the play as an actor and become the director. Yeah. But I had some phenomenal women.
Yes, you did.
And so I'm getting to that point because you were saying about ad-libbing and being able to not be able to really remember. So I have phenomenal women, and they were young actors and actresses who did not yet become established.
Okay.
And one of the things that I share with Tyler Perry is my need and ability to choose people who have not yet established themselves, because my whole what I'm trying to do is help you to become,
And you can mold them back.
I wasn't trying to mold anybody.
But no, I don't want to say mold is not the right term that I'm looking for. But they are more receptive, I believe, in what you're trying to do or what you're trying to convey. Because sometimes experience makes people think that
they can tell you what to do with your stuff. There you go.
That's where I'm trying to get to.
And I get where you're trying to get to. So yes, I use non-experienced individuals who were just starting out. Right. Even my daughter Kiana had an opportunity to act on stage. And even AJ. Well, AJ had some acting experience because he acted in school. Yeah. He was, handpicked to do some acting because he was just good at it. Yeah. And so that followed him. But AJ was also, what I loved about being able to direct and produce Women on the Edge is that I was able to bring my family in it. Because AJ was my musical director. He did all the music. He did, he did some writing. He wrote some of the, the songs. Kiana became a writer. She wrote some of the songs.
First of all, y'all,
it was phenomenal.
Yeah, I don't know about this phenomenal woman that I'm sitting across from right here and her phenomenal family. They are a family of doers, movers and shakers.
We are definitely movers and shakers.
Movers and shakers. You need something done, call his family, because I'm sure they can handle whatever it is that you need to. Actors, writers, singers, musicians. This is the house that Karoline built.
Thank you for listening to part 3 of Authors Speak with Karoline Bethea-Jones and Renee Marshall-McKinley. We'll see you here next time with part 4.